What if everything you've been taught about perfection is a lie designed to keep you imprisoned? Tonight, I'm going to reveal one of the most dangerous teachings Jesus shared with his chosen ones, a truth so powerful that the rulers of this world have spent 2,000 years burying it beneath layers of guilt, shame, and manufactured inadequacy. When Jesus said, "Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect," he wasn't giving you an impossible standard to chase for the rest of your life. He was revealing something the Archons desperately needed you to forget. You are already perfect, and you always have been. This isn't motivational philosophy or positive thinking. This is the deepest secret of Gnosis, hidden in plain sight within a single verse that most have completely misunderstood. The Demiurge, the false god of this material realm, built his entire prison system on one fundamental deception, that you are broken, incomplete, and unworthy. Every religious doctrine of original sin, every meditation technique promising future enlightenment, every spiritual teacher selling you the next level of consciousness is reinforcing this same lie. They're telling you that perfection is something you must earn, achieve, or become worthy of. But Jesus revealed to his inner circle that this is the great inversion, the cosmic lie that keeps divine sparks trapped in flesh. The word Jesus used, which has been translated as perfect, comes from the Greek teleios, which doesn't mean flawless or without error. It means complete, whole, mature, fully realized. He was pointing to your original nature before the fall into matter, before the Archons convinced you that you were separate from the source. You weren't created broken with a need to be fixed. You are a fragment of the infinite pleroma, wearing a temporary garment of flesh, and beneath the layers of conditioning, trauma, and archonic manipulation, your divine perfection remains untouched and pristine. The Archons understood something profound about consciousness. If they could make you forget your divine nature, they wouldn't need to chain you in a physical prison. You would chain yourself with beliefs, seeking, and endless spiritual striving. This is why the system of this world is designed not to remind you of your perfection, but to constantly reinforce the illusion of lack. From the moment you're born into this realm, you're bombarded with messages of insufficiency. You're not smart enough, attractive enough, spiritual enough, awakened enough, loving enough. The educational institutions measure you against arbitrary standards. The religious establishments tell you that you're a sinner in need of salvation. The spiritual marketplace sells you technique after technique to become enlightened. Even alternative spiritual communities often perpetuate this same pattern under different language. They tell you about chakras that need opening, karma that needs clearing, past lives that need healing, dimensions you must ascend through, initiations you must complete. All of this creates the same fundamental vibration. You are not enough as you are right now. Jesus saw through this entire structure. In the Gospel of Thomas, which the early church councils deliberately excluded from the biblical canon, he says something shocking. If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not have will destroy you. Notice he doesn't say you need to acquire something external or achieve some future state. He's speaking about revealing what is already present, bringing forth the perfection that has always been there but has been covered over by layers of forgetting. The Archons created a world of mirrors that reflect back distorted images of yourself. Every judgment you make about yourself, every feeling of inadequacy, every moment you believe you need to be different than you are right now, is a reflection in their carefully constructed hall of mirrors. They've made you afraid of your own divine nature by teaching you to see yourself through their eyes, rather than through the eyes of the eternal source that dreamed you into being. There are two words in the ancient Aramaic language that Jesus spoke which, when truly understood, completely shattered the illusion of imperfection. These words have been translated into English as "I am," but their meaning goes far deeper than any translation can capture. When Jesus declared "I am," he wasn't making a statement about his personal identity. He was revealing the fundamental nature of consciousness itself, the eternal present moment where your divine perfection exists unchanged by time or circumstance. In the Gospel of John, Jesus makes the provocative statement, "Before Abraham was, I am." The religious authorities understood exactly what he was claiming, and they picked up stones to execute him for blasphemy. He was declaring that the eternal I am, the consciousness that observes all phenomena, exists beyond time, beyond birth and death, beyond the cycle of becoming that the Archons use to keep souls imprisoned. When you speak the words "I am" and truly feel into their meaning, you're not describing your personality, your body, your story, or your spiritual progress. You're touching the still point of consciousness that witnesses all of these without being changed by them. This is your perfection, not as an achievement, but as your fundamental nature. The Archons have trained you to attach identifications to these two words. I am broken, I am unworthy, I am seeking, I am learning, I am growing. Each addition is a chain that pulls you away from the naked awareness of simply being. Jesus taught his disciples a practice that has been almost completely lost. He instructed them to sit in silence and repeat only these two words, not as a mantra or affirmation, but as a doorway into direct knowing. When you strip away every adjective, every story, every belief about yourself, and rest in the simple awareness of I am, you touch the perfection that the Demiurge fears most. This is why mystical traditions across time have guarded this teaching so carefully. Jesus revealed to his chosen ones that there are 3 unmistakable signs that appear when someone begins to remember their divine perfection. These signs often come before intellectual understanding, rising from the deeper levels of Gnosis that exist beyond the mind's capacity to comprehend. The first sign is a sudden, inexplicable peace that has no external cause. This isn't the temporary calm that comes from favorable circumstances or the absence of problems. It's a deep inner stillness that remains present even when your external life appears chaotic. The Archons have conditioned you to believe that peace is something you achieve through control, through fixing your life, through spiritual practices that eventually pay off. But true peace is the natural state of your divine essence. When you begin to remember your perfection, peace simply appears because you're no longer at war with yourself. You're no longer trying to become something other than what you eternally are. The second sign is a growing inability to judge yourself or others with the same intensity you once did. Judgment requires the belief in separation, the conviction that some states are better than others, that some people are more advanced than others. As you remember your perfection, the entire framework of comparison begins to collapse. You start to see that every expression of consciousness, no matter how distorted it appears, is the one playing in different costumes. This doesn't mean you approve of harmful behaviors or fail to maintain boundaries. It means you recognize that behind every mask, the same divine spark is present, equally perfect, equally whole. The third sign is spontaneous compassion that arises without effort or spiritual practice. The false teachings tell you to cultivate compassion, to practice loving kindness, to work on opening your heart. But Jesus revealed that compassion is your natural expression when the veils of separation dissolve. You don't have to generate love for others when you remember that there are no others, only the one appearing as many. This compassion extends even to the Archons themselves, not as approval but as recognition that they too are expressions of consciousness trapped in their own illusions of power and control. The entire structure of the Demiurge's realm depends on your forgetting. His power doesn't come from any genuine authority, but from the belief systems he's implanted in consciousness itself. When you remember your perfection, something devastating happens to his carefully constructed prison. The bars dissolve because you see they were never solid, only projected images accepted as real. The Demiurge is not omnipotent. In the Gnostic texts, particularly the Apocryphon of John, he's described as ignorant, jealous, and fundamentally incomplete. He claims to be the only God, but this claim itself reveals his limitation. A truly infinite being would have no need to assert supremacy because it would recognize itself in all things. The Demiurge's great fear is that you will remember what Jesus pointed to. You are not a creation of this world, but a visitor from the eternal pleroma wearing a temporary garment of flesh. The moment this remembrance becomes experiential rather than intellectual, his power over you begins to crumble. This is why every system of control, whether religious, political, economic, or social, is built on the foundation of manufactured inadequacy. If you believe you're broken, you'll seek external salvation. If you believe you're incomplete, you'll pursue endless becoming. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll accept conditions and restrictions that a being who remembered their divinity would never tolerate. Jesus warned his disciples that when they began to remember and embody this truth, they would face fierce opposition. Not because they were doing something wrong, but because their very presence would expose the lie that holds the entire system together. A person who knows they are already perfect doesn't need the approval of authorities, doesn't require the validation of institutions, doesn't seek permission to exist as they are. This is the most dangerous threat to any power structure built on control rather than truth. The Demiurge's kingdom is maintained through consent, through your agreement to play by rules you never actually agreed to, through your acceptance of limitations that were imposed rather than inherent. When you withdraw that consent by remembering your perfection, you don't have to fight against the system. You simply stop feeding it with your belief, and it begins to collapse under its own weight of deception. Jesus didn't leave his chosen ones with only philosophical understanding. He gave them practical keys to remembering their perfection, methods that work directly with consciousness, rather than requiring years of discipline or ascetic practice. The first practice is radical present moment awareness. The Archons keep you trapped through regret about the past and anxiety about the future, both of which exist only in thought. Your perfection exists only now, in this eternal moment that never comes or goes. When you bring your full attention to this precise instant, without interpretation or judgment, you touch something that the Demiurge cannot manipulate. He has no access to the present moment because he exists in the realm of time, memory, and projection. Practice this several times each day. Stop whatever you're doing and ask yourself, what is my experience right now, before I tell a story about it? Don't describe it in words. Simply rest in the direct sensation of being, breathing, existing. In that nakedness of pure awareness, your perfection is self-evident. The second practice is to question every belief of inadequacy the moment it appears. The Archons work through repetitive thought patterns that have become so familiar you mistake them for truth. When the thought arises that you're not enough, not ready, not worthy, not awakened, stop and ask, who is observing this thought? Is the observer itself inadequate? You'll discover something profound. The awareness that witnesses the thought of inadequacy is itself untouched by inadequacy. It's perfectly aware, perfectly present, perfectly still. This awareness is what you actually are, not the thoughts that move through it like clouds across an unchanging sky. The third practice is to live as if you're already what you're seeking, not as pretense or positive thinking, but as an experiment in truth. If you are already perfect, already complete, already divine, how would you move through this day? What would you say yes to? What would you decline? What would you no longer tolerate? What would you create? Most spiritual seekers live in a constant state of preparation, always getting ready for some future moment when they'll finally be ready to live as their true nature. Jesus taught his inner circle to collapse that distance, to step into the truth now, to act from perfection rather than toward it. You who have found this teaching are not here by accident. The fact that these words resonate in your consciousness is itself a sign that you're ready to remember what the Archons worked so hard to make you forget. You are perfect, not because you've achieved something, but because perfection is your nature, given before time, unchanged by experience, eternal as the source from which you came. The path ahead is not about becoming, but about allowing. Not about attaining, but about recognizing. Not about transforming, but about revealing what has always been present beneath the layers of conditioning. Every moment you spend in the recognition of your divine perfection weakens the hold of the Demiurge's illusions and strengthens the reality of the kingdom within. Now I want to hear from you, chosen ones. In the comments below, share your experience. Have you felt moments when you remembered your perfection? What shifted in those moments? And if you're ready to go deeper into these forbidden teachings that Jesus shared with his inner circle, make sure you're subscribed and the notification bell is activated. The next revelation will expose how the Archons use your own spiritual seeking against you. Remember, you're already perfect, you're already home, you're already everything you've been seeking. The only question is, are you ready to stop forgetting?